This is a dramatized story inspired by real debt situations. For educational and entertainment purposes only. Not legal or financial advice.
$79,000. That was the number I had been hiding from my wife for almost 4 years. I was 43 years old, teaching 5th grade, and I had been lying, not with words exactly, but with silence. Every month, I shuffled money around, made minimum payments on 3 separate loan servicers, and told myself it would somehow get better. It didn't. My name is Daniel. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the first person in my family to go to college. My parents were so proud. My mom cried at my high school graduation when I told her I'd been accepted to a 4-year university. Nobody in our family had ever done it. Nobody warned me what it was going to cost. I took out federal loans my freshman year. Then sophomore year. Then I changed my major, added a 5th year, went back for a master's degree in education because the job market for teachers required it in my state. By the time I walked across that stage with my teaching certificate, I owed $54,000. I was 26 years old. I told myself it was an investment. Everyone said it was an investment. The first 5 years weren't so bad. I landed a job at an elementary school in Columbus, making $38,000 a year. I was on an income-driven repayment plan, so my monthly payment was manageable. Around $210 a month. I barely touched the principal. I didn't fully understand that at the time. I thought I was handling it. Then I met Rachel. We got married when I was 32. We bought a starter home outside Columbus, $187,000 30-year mortgage. Our monthly payment with taxes and insurance came out to $1,140. We had a daughter, Mia, in 2016. Rachel worked as a dental hygienist, making about $52,000. Together, we felt like we were doing okay. Middle class, stable, normal. But the loans kept growing because I was on an income-driven plan and only paying the interest-adjacent minimum. The principal barely moved. By the time Mia was born, my balance had actually increased from $54,000 to $61,000 due to accrued interest being added back to the principal, a process called capitalization. I didn't understand capitalization when I signed those promissory notes at 19 years old. Nobody explained it to me. I switched servicers twice when the Department of Education reassigned accounts. Each time, something got lost. Paperwork, payment history. I had to recertify my income-driven repayment plan and missed a window once, which triggered a spike in my monthly payment for 3 months before it was corrected. By 38, my balance was $67,000. By 40, it was $73,000. I stopped telling Rachel the exact number somewhere around year 4 of our marriage. She knew I had loans, she just didn't know how much. I kept the loan servicer statements going to an email address she didn't have access to. I told myself I was protecting her from stress. The truth is, I was protecting myself from the conversation I didn't know how to have. By the time I was 43, the number on my screen was 79,249,0. 17 years after graduation, I had been paying on these loans for 17 years and owed more than I borrowed. The Tuesday it all fell apart started like any other Tuesday. I was grading spelling tests at the kitchen table when Rachel came in from work earlier than usual. She set her bag down slowly, the way she does when something is wrong. She'd been talking to her coworker Jana, whose husband was a loan officer. Jana had mentioned something about refinancing student loans. Rachel had asked if maybe we should look into that for my loans. She'd asked casually, and then she'd said the number she assumed it was, something like, "Whatever's left, maybe 15 or 20,000?" I didn't answer fast enough. "Daniel, how much is it actually?" The silence between us lasted about 4 seconds. It felt like 4 minutes. $79,000. I watched her face go through about 6 different expressions in under 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, realization, hurt. And then something quiet and cold that scared me more than any of the others. "How long have you known it was that much?" "A while." "A while. Daniel. Mia starts middle school in 2 years. We've been talking about saving for her college, and you've been hiding $79,000 in debt from me. For how long? I told her. 4 years. She didn't yell. Rachel never yells. She just walked to the bedroom, closed the door, and I sat at that kitchen table alone with my daughter's spelling tests and the weight of 17 years of compounding interest pressing down on my chest like something physical. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with my laptop and finally, for the first time, actually looked at everything. Really looked. Student loan balance across 3 servicers, $79,000, mortgage remaining balance, $141,000, car payment on Rachel's Civic, $287 a month, 18 months left. My truck, paid off, thankfully. Credit card, 1 Visa I had been using to cover the gap between my salary and our life, $9,800. Total debt, just over $230,000 if you counted the mortgage. Total non-mortgage debt, $89,014. My take-home pay after taxes and benefits, $2,140 a month. Rachel's take-home, $3,200 a month. Combined, $6,140. Mortgage, $1,240. Car, $287 as minimum loan payments across all 3 servicers. $618 credit card, minimum, $196 utilities, groceries, gas, Maya's after-school program, roughly $2,100 most months. That left us $1,299 on paper. In reality, there were always extra costs. A sick visit to the pediatrician, a car repair, a school field trip, a birthday party. Real life doesn't fit into spreadsheets. I had been robbing Peter to pay Paul for years, shifting the credit card balance, making the minimum, letting the student loans sit on the income-driven plan with the principal growing every single month. I thought I was managing it. I was actually just delaying it. In the weeks after that night, I made the mistakes that a lot of people in my position make. I called a debt settlement company I found through an online ad at 2 a.m. They promised they could cut my loan balance in half. They charged an upfront consultation fee. They were not a nonprofit. They were not a licensed counselor. They were, I would later learn, essentially a sales operation preying on people who were desperate and not sleeping and clicking on ads at midnight. I gave them $300 before something felt wrong, and I stopped returning their calls. I looked into balance transfer cards for the credit card debt, 0% APR for 15 months. I transferred $6,000. The fee alone was $180. And I didn't change the spending behavior that had created the balance, so by month 8, I had partially refilled the original card. I was now carrying debt on 2 cards instead of 1. I called my union rep and asked, half-jokingly, if there was any way to pull from my teacher's pension early. She told me clearly that Ohio's teacher retirement system did not allow early withdrawals without separation from service, and even if it had, the tax penalties and long-term damage to my retirement would have been catastrophic. She said it gently, but firmly. She also said something that stayed with me. You're not the first teacher to sit in this exact spot, Daniel. The collection calls weren't on the student loans. Those were federal and still in a technically current status on the income-driven plan. But I had missed 2 payments on the Visa after the balance transfer shuffle got confusing. The calls started coming to my cell phone, then to the school. A collection agency called the school's main office and left a message with the secretary. I found out when my principal mentioned it. That was one of the worst moments of my adult life. Standing in the hallway outside my classroom, being told by my principal that someone had called about a financial matter. I was 43 years old, and a collection agency had called my school. Rachel and I were barely speaking, not fighting, just existing in the same house in a cold, exhausted parallel. Mia noticed. Kids always notice. She asked me one evening why Mommy seemed sad. I told her we were just tired from work. I was adding another lie to the pile. The turning point was a Thursday in November. Rachel came to me and said she had found a nonprofit credit counseling agency, a NFCC member organization she was careful to specify, and she had made an appointment for both of us. She wasn't asking. She was telling me we were going. We sat across from a counselor named Brenda at a small office about 20 minutes from our house. Brenda was calm, organized, and completely without judgment. She had a legal pad. She asked us to walk her through every number. Rachel held my hand while I talked. That surprised me. Brenda listened, made notes, and then she did something nobody had ever done for me in 17 years of having these loans. She explained exactly what was happening and exactly what our options were. She told us that for federal student loans, income-driven repayment plans, IDR plans like SAVE, PAYE, and IBR, calculate your monthly payment based on your income and family size, not your balance. The problem is that if the payment doesn't cover the interest being generated, the balance grows. This is what had happened to me. The plan had kept me current, but hadn't stopped capitalization. She explained that federal loans also carry a forgiveness provision out of the repayment period, typically 20 to 25 years depending on the plan, but that any forgiven amount may be treated as taxable income, so borrowers need to plan for that. She was careful to say that policy around this has changed multiple times and that I should work with a student loan counselor or attorney to understand the current rules. For the credit card debt, she explained that a nonprofit debt management plan, a DMP, could potentially consolidate my unsecured debts into one monthly payment, often at a reduced interest rate negotiated directly with creditors. This was different from the for-profit debt settlement company I'd called at midnight. A DMP through an NFCC agency doesn't promise to cut your balance. It negotiates your interest rate and organizes your payment into a structured plan. It does appear on your credit report and can affect your FUSIO score during enrollment, but it is not the same as bankruptcy and does not have the same long-term legal consequences. She walked us through bankruptcy options as well, not because she thought we were there, but because she wanted us to understand the full picture. Chapter 7. Bankruptcy, she explained, is a liquidation. Most unsecured debts like credit cards and personal loans can be discharged, often within 4 to 6 months. But student loans, she made clear, are extremely difficult to discharge through bankruptcy. You have to prove something called undue hardship in a separate legal proceeding, and courts apply a very high standard. Most people with student loan debt do not qualify. A bankruptcy attorney can advise on whether your specific situation meets the threshold, but it is not a common outcome. Chapter 13. Bankruptcy is a reorganization. You keep your assets and repay a portion of your debts over 3 to 5 years through a court-approved plan. It stays on your credit report for 7 years. Again, student loans are generally treated separately and are not discharged through Chapter 13, though the reorganization can relieve enough pressure from other debts to make the loan payments manageable. Brenda looked at our numbers and said she didn't think we were in bankruptcy territory yet. But she said that if the situation continued to spiral without intervention, it could become a consideration, and she encouraged us to, at minimum, have a free consultation with a bankruptcy attorney so we understood where the line was. She was clear: consult a licensed professional before making any financial or legal decisions. She said it just like that. What Brenda recommended for us specifically, and again, every situation is different, and what worked for us may not be right for your situation, was a combination approach. Enroll the credit card debt in a debt management plan through their agency. Request a formal recertification and adjustment of my income-driven repayment plan to make sure it was optimized for our current household income and family size. And look seriously into whether I qualified for Public Service Loan Forgiveness, PSLF, because I was a public school teacher working for a qualifying employer. That last part hit me like cold water. I had heard of PSLF. I had vaguely known it existed, but in 17 years, no servicer had ever sat down with me and clearly explained that as a public school teacher making qualifying payments on a qualifying federal loan under a qualifying repayment plan, I might be eligible for forgiveness after 120 qualifying payments, 10 years. My payments had been on and off income-driven plans for years. Not all of them would count, but some would. Brenda helped me understand that I needed to submit an employment certification form and get a formal count of my qualifying payments. I will not pretend that meeting fixed everything. It didn't. But I drove home that night and I could breathe. Not fully, but enough. Rachel and I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where everything had broken open 3 months earlier, and we went through the numbers together. Really together, for the first time. We enrolled the credit card debt in the DMP. We recertified the income-driven repayment plan. I submitted the PSLF employment certification form. The PSLF servicer came back with a count of 61 qualifying payments. That meant I needed 59 more, just under 5 years, to reach forgiveness on my federal loans, assuming I stayed in public school teaching and maintained the qualifying plan. Assuming the program continued in its current form, which Brenda had reminded me was subject to policy change. No guarantees, but 61 payments already counted. That was real. My credit score took a hit when we enrolled in the DMP. It dropped about 40 points, bringing my FIOS score down to 611. Brenda had told us to expect that. She also told us that consistent on-time payments through the DMP tend to stabilize and gradually improve scores over time. We weren't applying for anything new, we just needed to hold the line. I am not on the other side of this. I want to be honest with you about that. The balance on my student loans is still large. The DMP will take about 4 years to clear the credit card debt. Our budget is tight in a way that sometimes feels suffocating. Rachel and I still have hard conversations about money, but we have them together now. That's different. What I know now that I wish I had known at 26, standing in the financial aid office signing forms I didn't understand, is this. Compounding interest on student loans is not abstract. It is mathematical and relentless, and it does not care how hard you work to earn that degree. Income-driven repayment plans can keep you current while your balance grows. Capitalization is real, and silence. The kind of silence I maintained for 4 years at a kitchen table with my wife costs more than the debt itself. If you are somewhere in this story right now, if you recognized yourself in any of it, please don't wait the way I did. Find an NFCC member nonprofit credit counseling agency. Request a free consultation with a bankruptcy attorney if you need to understand your options fully. If you have federal student loans and work in public service, look into PSLF and make sure your payments are actually qualifying. And before you click on any ad at midnight promising to cut your balance in half, ask whether the company is nonprofit and whether the counselor is certified. Consult a licensed professional before making any financial or legal decisions. I mean that, not as a disclaimer, as someone who lost 4 years hiding a number that a professional could have helped me with long before it got to $79,000. Get the free debt checklist in the description. Link below.